The voicemail was dated the exact day my mother disappeared, yet I'd never heard it. I'm sitting at my kitchen table with a plastic machine that smells like dust and old pennies, the kind of smell that only comes from things that have been left alone too long. The red message light still blinks like it's been waiting all these years just to accuse me. And before I press play, let me tell you the promise I'm making you, because I wish someone had made it to me sooner. In a few minutes, you're going to hear what my mother said in that voicemail, the one I never truly received, the one that finally explained the choice that cracked our family in half. And I'm going to tell you why hearing it didn't erase the pain, but it made forgiveness possible. Have you ever hated someone so long it started to feel like part of your personality? Like if you set it down, you wouldn't know who you were without it? My name is Evelyn. Most folks call me Evie. I'm a grandmother now, the kind who keeps cough drops in every purse and saves buttons in a jar, just in case. And for decades, I kept one other thing, too, a hot anger toward my mother, Loretta. I told myself it kept me safe. I told myself it kept me strong. But today, that old machine is humming on my table, and the cassette inside it is a time capsule I didn't ask for. And the worst part is this, I didn't find it in my mother's house. I found it in my aunt's. Aunt Dolores died 3 months ago. 91. Sharp to the end. She could still peel an apple in one continuous ribbon and tell you exactly what you'd paid for your first car, whether you remembered it or not. Cleaning out her place felt like sorting through somebody else's rules. Her pantry was lined like a library. Her towels were folded with military corners. Her dish soap was watered down, because full strength is for people who like to waste money. And on her kitchen counter, tucked behind a ceramic rooster, there it was, an answering machine I hadn't seen since the early 2000s. The kind with a little cassette tape inside, like it's trying to pretend it isn't recording your life. The plug was still in the outlet. The clock display was blinking 12 o'clock, stuck in a permanent midnight. And the message light, Lord help me, was still blinking. You know that feeling when something is innocent to everyone else, but to you it's loaded? That's what that blinking light was. I picked it up like it might bite. And I heard Dolores's voice in my head, crisp as ever, "Don't go digging, Evie. You won't like what you find." So of course, I dug. I brought the machine home, set it on this table, and wiped the dust off with the corner of my dish towel. The plastic was yellowed, like old teeth. The buttons were smudged where someone's thumb had pressed them 1,000 times. And there, under the little cassette door, a label in Dolores's handwriting, 2003, calls. That year sits in my body like a splinter. Because that was the year my mother tried to come back, at least, that's what I told myself at the time. And it was also the year I decided, for good, that she didn't get to. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Dolores had been keeping a message from her. Not a letter. Not a rumor. Not a second-hand story. Her actual voice. And now it was sitting in my kitchen, waiting for my hand. I opened the door. The tape was already inside. Like someone had put it there and said, someday. Not today, but someday. My finger hovered over play. And before I tell you what happens when I press it, you need to understand why I didn't forgive my mother for nearly 50 years. Because forgiveness doesn't land in an empty place. It lands on top of a story you've been telling yourself to survive. So let me take you back to the night everything broke. I was 16 years old, and our house smelled like fried onions and cigarette smoke. The kitchen fan rattled like it had a secret. The linoleum floor was always a little sticky, no matter how hard my mother scrubbed it. My mother, Loretta, was the kind of pretty that made strangers look twice, but she never seemed to notice. She wore her hair pinned up with bobby pins, always losing one and finding it with her bare foot. Her hands were rough from cleaning other people's houses. Her eyes were tired from watching mine. That night, she was making my brother Tommy and me pack a bag. Not a vacation bag. A fast bag. Put socks, she said, voice low. And your school picture. The one in the cardboard frame. I laughed once, because I didn't understand. Why my school picture? She didn't laugh back. She didn't even look at me. She just kept folding clothes like her hands were trying to outrun her fear. Tommy, who was 9, kept asking, "Are we going to Grandma's?" "We're going to Dolores's," my mother said. Aunt Dolores wasn't the warm kind of aunt. She was the kind who corrected your grammar while you cried. She lived across town in a small house that smelled like starch and Vicks. "Why?" I asked. "What's going on?" My mother finally looked up. And I saw it, clear as day, something in her face had already decided. "Just do it," she said. "Evie, please." When a mother says please like that, it's not a request. It's an emergency. Outside, a car door slammed. Footsteps on the porch. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. That was my father. Hank. He wasn't the kind of man who hit you every day. He was worse. He was the kind of man who could be charming for a week, and then explode over a spoon left in the sink. You never knew which version was walking through the door. So you learned to listen to his footsteps like they were weather. That night, his footsteps were thunder. My mother shoved the bags toward us. "Back door," she whispered. "Now." "Mom," I started. She grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug in, not to hurt me, like she was trying to anchor herself. "Evie," she said, and her voice cracked on my name. "If you love me at all, you'll do exactly what I'm saying." What do you do with that? When love turns into an order. We went out the back door into the humid night. I remember the mosquitoes, the way they whined near my ears. I remember the wet grass soaking my sneakers. I remember my brother's small hand shaking in mine. We cut through the alley. We didn't have a car. We had our legs and our fear. From the front of the house, I heard my father's voice rise, muffled through the walls, a sound like a pot boiling over. Then my mother's voice, lower, pleading. I kept walking. But every step felt like betrayal. At Dolores's house, my aunt opened the door in her nightgown, hair wrapped in curlers like she'd been expecting us. That's the detail that haunts me even now. Expecting us. She didn't say, "What happened?" She didn't say, "Where's Loretta?" She just said, "Get in." We sat on her couch, stiff and sweaty, while she poured milk into chipped mugs like it was any other Tuesday. Tommy fell asleep with his head on my thigh. Midnight passed. Then 1 o'clock. Then 2. And my mother didn't come. At 3 in the morning, Dolores finally spoke, staring at the dark window like it might confess something. "Your mama's gone," she said. I blinked. Gone where? Dolores's mouth tightened. Where she wanted to be. I stood up so fast the mug tipped and spilled milk on her rug. "That's not true," I said. Dolores didn't flinch. "It's always the truth," she said. Eventually. And that was the night I learned our family's favorite language, silence wrapped around a lie. The next morning, my father didn't come looking for us. No police showed up. No neighbors asked questions. It was as if my mother had been erased with a single swipe. In the days that followed, I kept waiting for her to appear at Dolores's door, breathless, laughing like, "Oh honey, I'm sorry, it was all a misunderstanding." But instead, Dolores went to the school office and signed papers. My aunt's name replaced my mother's on emergency contact forms. My mother's mail stopped coming. And when I asked questions, Dolores answered with chores. Dry the dishes. Fold the towels. Focus on your grades. As if obedience could cauterize a wound. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. And the story everybody told, Dolores, the neighbors, even my father when he felt like being cruel, was simple: Loretta ran off. She chose herself. She chose freedom. She chose a man. She chose anything but us. What would you have believed at 16? When you're standing in a borrowed bedroom with your clothes in a trash bag, and the one person who ever brushed your hair with gentleness is suddenly at before in your life? I believed the worst. Because the worst at least made sense. And once you believe the worst, you build your whole spine around it. Over the years, my anger became tidy. It sat where love should have been and told me it was doing a fine job. Let me show you what that looked like. Small moments, the kind that don't make it into family stories, but make the person you become. My 17th birthday, Dolores set a cake on the table. Chocolate. No frosting flowers, because flowers are for weddings. She lit one candle, one. You're not a child, she said. I stared at the flame and thought, my mother doesn't even know I'm here. When I blew it out, I didn't make a wish. I made a vow, I will never need anyone who can leave. At my high school graduation, Dolores sat in the bleachers wearing a hat like she was going to church. She clapped politely. Tommy waved like a puppy. I scanned the crowd anyway. Every woman with dark hair made my heart jump. Nobody came. On the drive home, Dolores said, "You did fine." Fine. Like it didn't matter that I'd been waiting my whole life for one specific face. Years later, when I got married, I mailed an invitation to the last address I had for my mother, an old P.O. box number I'd copied from a Christmas card that arrived and then stopped. I didn't tell Dolores I was doing it. It felt like sneaking food to a stray cat. The invitation came back a week later, stamped return to sender. Dolores saw it on the counter and slid it into the trash like it was a used napkin. "Don't pick scabs," she said. I didn't argue. I just stood there, staring at the trash can, feeling 14 again. When my first baby was born, a nurse asked, "Do you want your mom in the room?" I laughed too loudly. "No," I said. "She's not that kind of mother." But later that night, when the hospital lights dimmed and the hallway quieted down, I cried into my pillow so my husband wouldn't hear. Not because I wanted my mother in the room, because I wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted like that. And all through those years, Dolores kept her house like a fortress. She never mentioned Loretta unless she was swatting a fly of a memory away. She never said, "Your mom called." She never said, "Your mom wrote." So I stopped asking. Because asking made me small. And I hated feeling small more than I hated feeling lonely. Then came 2003. I was 42. My hair had started to gray at my temples. My kids were old enough to roll their eyes at me. Life was busy in that loud, ordinary way. One afternoon, Dolores called my house phone. Her voice was clipped. "Your mother rang," she said. I froze with a dish in my hands, soap bubbles sliding down my wrist. "What did she say?" I asked, and my voice didn't sound like mine. Dolores paused. Just a beat too long. "She didn't say much," she said. "She asked for you." My heart did something childish, hopeful, stupid. "Did you give her my number?" "No," Dolores said immediately. "Too fast." I told her not to bother. There are moments you can feel yourself becoming someone. That was one. I gripped the dish until it squeaked. "Why would you do that?" I whispered. Dolores's voice hardened. "Because it'll only stir you up," she said. "And you've got children. You don't need her chaos." Chaos. Like my mother was a storm cloud, not a person. I should have demanded the number. I should have driven straight to Dolores's house and grabbed her phone from her hand. But instead, I did what I'd been trained to do, I swallowed it. Because in my family, you didn't confront. You endured. That night, I told my husband, "She called." He asked, "Do you want to call her back?" And I said, "No." But the truth is, I didn't know what I wanted. Have you ever stood at the edge of something you've wanted your whole life, and realized you're afraid it won't hold your weight? A week later, Dolores called again. She rang again, she said. "What did you do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Same thing," Dolores said. I told her to stop. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at my own refrigerator covered in my children's drawings. I remember thinking, if I let my mother back in now, will I fall apart? Will she leave again and take whatever's left of me with her? So I made the worst kind of decision. I chose pride. I told myself, she had her chance. I told myself, I'm protecting my kids from disappointment. I told myself, she doesn't deserve me. And then the calls stopped. A year after that, I heard through a cousin that Loretta had died. Lung cancer. Fast. I didn't go to the funeral. I said, what's the point? But the point was that I couldn't stand the thought of seeing a coffin and realizing she was really gone, and that I'd never asked why. And I lived like that for another 20 years. Carrying a story that kept me upright. Until 3 months ago, when Dolores died and left me her house key. And until 1 week ago, when I found that answering machine. Now we're back at my kitchen table. I plug the machine in. The motor inside whirs like it's waking up from a long sleep. My hands are dry, but my palms sweat anyway. My granddaughter, Annie, is in the living room watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that her grandma is about to meet a ghost. I sit down. I don't trust my knees. My thumb hovers over play again. And I realize something that makes my throat tighten. I'm not afraid of what my mother might say. I'm afraid of what I might feel. Because anger is simple. Grief is complicated. I take a breath. Okay, I whisper, like I'm talking to myself at 16. Okay, Evie. Here we go. The machine clicks, and then, static. A small, mechanical sound, like a door unlocking. A voice comes through, warped at first by time. But then it clears. And it is her. Loretta. Not the version in my head, the villain, the runaway, the woman who chose the road. This is the real one, older, thinner in the voice, a little breathless. In the background, there's a hospital sound, an intercom far away, a cart rolling, a cough. She speaks like she's trying not to cry because crying would steal seconds she doesn't have. Evie, she says, and my name in her mouth is a touch I haven't felt in decades. I don't know if Dolores will let you hear this. My stomach flips. My eyes sting immediately, like my body recognizes truth faster than my mind does. Loretta continues, if you're listening, then I got lucky, or Dolores finally got tired. My hand flies to my mouth. Because there it is. The first crack in the story I lived inside. She inhales, shaky. I'm at County General, she says. I don't have much strength, so I'm going to say this plain. Plain. Like she's been rehearsing the cleanest way to tell a dirty truth. I didn't leave you because I didn't want you. My chest tightens so hard I have to lean forward, elbows on the table, like I'm trying to hold myself together with my own arms. Loretta's voice drops. I left you because Hank was going to kill you. The words sit there. Heavy. Impossible. For a second, my brain rejects them. Because if that's true, then everything I built my life on, every slammed door in my heart, was built on sand. Loretta keeps going, and you can hear paper rustling like she's gripping something, maybe a bed sheet, maybe a form. He wasn't just mean, she says. Evie, he owed people. Bad people. And when they came to the house, and you stood between him and Tommy. I remember that. I remember a knock at the door and my father suddenly polite, suddenly sweaty. I remember a man with a leather jacket and a gold ring that flashed when he pointed. I never knew what it meant. Loretta whispers, Hank told them you were the reason he couldn't pay. He said he had a daughter he could use if they didn't give him more time. My skin goes cold. My throat makes a sound I don't recognize. What kind of mother hears that and keeps cooking dinner like normal? Loretta answers without being asked. I went to the police, she says. They said they couldn't do anything unless he did something first. Unless there was proof. She laughs once, small and bitter. Like a girl's bruises aren't proof enough. My mind flashes to the morning she wore long sleeves in July. The way she flinched when someone moved too fast. Loretta continues, so I made a deal. A deal. The word is a hinge. I told Hank I was leaving, she says. I told him I'd take the blame for the money he stole from his job. I told him I'd go quiet if he let you go. My mouth falls open. I got you to Dolores's because she promised me, she'd keep you and Tommy safe, and she'd let me come back when Hank was gone. In the background, Loretta coughs hard, the kind of cough that scares you. When she speaks again, her voice is thinner. Hank was supposed to turn himself in, she says. But he didn't. He ran. And the people he owed, they came looking for him. They came looking for me. I'm shaking now. My hands are actually shaking on the table. Loretta says, Dolores told me if I came back, she'd tell them where you were. She said it like she was doing me a favor. She said, Loretta, you made your bed. Don't drag children into it. I squeeze my eyes shut. Dolores's voice fits those words perfectly. Loretta's voice softens, and that softness is what breaks me. So I stayed gone, she says. I moved from place to place. I worked under other names. I watched over you from a distance like a coward. I stood across the street from your school once. You had your hair in a braid and you were laughing with a friend. A sob slips out of me, sharp, embarrassing. Because while I was building a story where she forgot me, she was watching me laugh from across the street. Loretta says, I wrote letters. I mailed money in envelopes with no return address. Dolores sent them back, unopened. My eyes snap open. I look instinctively toward the hallway closet where I keep old papers, like the letters might be there, hiding. Loretta's breathing is ragged now. I'm sick, she says simply. I don't have time to wait for permission anymore. Then she says the sentence that makes the room tilt. Evie. I'm sorry I made you think you weren't worth staying for. I press my fist against my mouth. My shoulders shake like there's an engine inside me. She continues, you were the reason I tried to be brave. Tommy, too. I was just outnumbered by fear. Then her voice firms, urgent. Listen to me, she says. If you ever want proof, it's in Dolores's cedar chest. Under the quilt with the green stitching. There's a folder. Hank's court papers. My statement. Everything. I feel my eyebrows pull together. Cedar chest. Quilt. Green stitching. Dolores had that chest. I sat on it as a teenager while she lectured me about posture. Loretta coughs again, and when she speaks, she sounds like she's smiling through tears. I love you, she says. Even if you hate me. Then, almost as an afterthought, like she can't help herself, she adds, and Evie? Tell your babies I'm sorry I wasn't there to hold them. The tape hisses. Goodbye, sweetheart, she whispers. The machine clicks off. The red light keeps blinking, like it wants to ask me what I'm going to do now. For a long second, I don't move. Because what do you do when the villain in your life story turns out to be a person who was trying to save you? I slide off my chair onto the floor without meaning to. My knees just give. The tile is cold against my legs. I sit there like a child who has dropped something and doesn't know whether to pick it up. My first feeling isn't forgiveness. It's grief, sharp and immediate, because if that message had reached me in 2003, I could have heard her voice while she was still alive. I could have asked questions. I could have let her explain. I could have been her daughter again, even briefly. Instead, I spent 20 more years being a guard dog over a misunderstanding. And then the second feeling comes in, right behind it, rage. Not at Loretta. At Dolores. Because that voicemail answered the question I'd never dared to ask out loud, who benefits when people don't speak? Dolores did. She got to be the hero. The steady one. The martyr aunt who raised those kids when their mama ran off. She got the praise at church and the casseroles and the pity. And we got a lifetime without the truth. I wipe my face with the hem of my shirt, because there are no tissues close enough for this kind of mess. My hands are trembling so badly I can't stand up. That's when my daughter Claire walks in. She's 50 now, which is a strange thing to say, because in my head she is still 7, still asking me to tie her shoes. She takes one look at me on the floor and her face changes. "Mom," she says softly. "What happened?" I point at the answering machine like it's evidence at a trial. "It's her," I manage. Claire's eyes widen. "Grandma Loretta?" I nod. And suddenly I'm afraid again, afraid that if I tell it wrong, I'll ruin it, the way my family ruined everything with bad telling. So I do the only honest thing. I press rewind. The sound is thin and frantic, like a little animal running backward through time. Claire sits on the chair. I stay on the floor. It feels right, for some reason. Like I'm making room for the girl I was. I hit play again. We listen together. Claire covers her mouth when Loretta says, "I don't know if Dolores will let you hear this." When Loretta says, "Hank was going to kill you," Claire's eyes fill. When Loretta says, "I stood across the street from your school once," Claire looks at me like she's seeing my whole life in a new shape. And when the message ends, Claire reaches down and takes my hand. Her palm is warm. Mine is cold and spotted and shaking. "Oh, Mom," she whispers. "Oh my God." I swallow hard. "I didn't know," I say. And I hate how small it sounds. Claire looks at the machine. "Do you believe it?" she asks. And that's the question, isn't it? Because families train you to doubt your own reality. I stare at the tape door. "I believe her voice," I say finally. "I believe the way she said my name. People don't fake that." Claire nods slowly, like she's filing it away in her heart. "She loved you," she says. I close my eyes. "Yes," I whisper. And the word tastes unfamiliar. The next day, we drove back to Dolores's house. The cedar chest was in the spare bedroom, just like it always had been, pushed against the wall beneath a framed print of a lighthouse. Dolores loved lighthouses. "They stand their ground," she used to say. My fingers hesitated on the lid. For a moment, I could almost hear Dolores snapping, "Don't you dare." Then I lifted it anyway. The cedar smell hit me, sharp, clean, preserved. Under the quilt with the green stitching, exactly as Loretta said, there was a manila folder. No label. Just thick paper, worn at the edges. Claire held her breath. I pulled it out. Inside were court documents. A police report. A typed statement with my mother's name at the bottom, signed in ink. Hank's name, too. Words like embezzlement, threat, endangerment. And there, clipped to the back, a photograph. Me and Tommy outside our old house, taken from across the street. I had my hair in a braid. I was laughing. My mother had been telling the truth. Claire whispered, "She was watching you." I touched the photograph with the pad of my finger like it might burn. In that moment, the anger I'd carried didn't vanish. It simply changed address. Because Loretta didn't abandon me. She sacrificed the version of herself that got to be called Mom, so I could stay alive. And Dolores took that sacrifice and turned it into her own crown. Now, here's the part I'm not proud of. I drove to Dolores's grave that afternoon. I stood over it with the folder in my hands, the wind tugging my cardigan like a child wanting attention. And I said out loud, "Why?" My voice sounded strange in a cemetery. Too alive. I wanted an answer. I wanted Dolores to sit up and explain herself. I wanted her to feel, for 1 second, what it was like to be kept in the dark. But of course, the dead don't do us favors. So all I had was my own thinking. Maybe Dolores truly believed she was protecting us. Maybe she saw Loretta's mess and feared it would spill onto us again. Maybe she liked being needed so much she couldn't bear to share the role. Two things can be true at once. People can love you and still steal from you. And that's why forgiveness is complicated. Because forgiving Loretta meant admitting I'd been wrong. It meant grieving not only her, but the life we could have had. It meant looking at 16-year-old me and saying, you did what you had to do. You believed what you were given. But you're allowed to set it down now. That night, I sat back at this kitchen table with the tape in front of me. Claire had gone home. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator cycling on and off. I played the voicemail one more time, alone. Not to punish myself. To learn her voice. And when she said, I love you, even if you hate me, I whispered back, I don't hate you anymore. Did that fix everything? No. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite the past, it releases the grip. The past is still the past. I still lost my mother, twice, once when she left, and again when she died. I still grew up with a hole in my chest where answers should have been. But something shifted. I stopped picturing her as a closed door. I started picturing her as a woman standing in a hospital, breathless, trying to shove love through a crack someone else kept blocking. Some apologies arrive late, but they still matter. The next weekend, I pulled out an old photo box for my grandkids. The kind with rounded corners and faded snapshots. I slid Loretta's photograph, the one from across the street, into a small frame. I set it on the shelf beside my own graduation picture. Not because the story is pretty. Because it's true. And I made a decision about the voicemail. I didn't throw it away. I didn't hide it. I labeled it carefully, in my own handwriting this time, Loretta, the truth. Then I wrote down every word she said, so time can't warp it again. And I put the transcript in the same box where I keep birth certificates and old recipes, proof of where we come from. Because secrets don't keep families safe. They just keep families silent. If you're listening to this and you've got an old message you've been afraid to hear, maybe it's on a phone, or a tape, or buried in your own memory, what would happen if you let yourself listen? Not to excuse everything. Not to pretend it didn't hurt. Just to finally know what's true. If this story stayed with you, please tap like. It helps more than you'd think, and it helps this little channel, Dust of Old Days, find the people who need these kinds of stories. And if you want more grandmother style, slow burn family tales about lost messages, old secrets, and the hard work of healing, make sure you subscribe to Dust of Old Days. One last thing. Sometimes I imagine Loretta in that hospital, gripping the phone, choosing her words like she's packing a bag for a child. And I imagine her hoping, even with a tired body, that somewhere down the line her daughter would finally hear her. Well, Mom. I heard you. And I don't know where voices go when we're gone. But if they go anywhere at all, I hope mine reaches her the way hers finally reached me. Goodbye, Loretta. I'm sorry it took me so long. And thank you for trying anyway.